All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I've gotten some couple notes from people who will be joining shortly, but welcome to our first experimental Q1 all donor update call. As I was just describing, there's so many things that happen at Build and time moves so quickly that we want to stay in touch with the people who support us a little more frequently. And we also know that there's no substitute for being able to sit down and tell you what we're doing face to face. And in these times, this is what that looks like. So here we are on Zoom, but we're happy to be connecting with all of our supporters at every level. And what we're going to do today is I'll introduce our CEO, Adam Alonso. He's going to give us a little brief overview of what's happening at Build and also the structure of Build, because we know that in this large group of donors, there are people who are very familiar with our organizations and people who are just getting to know us. So we'll take a little bit of time to review the general structure of Build and then also how we're adapting this fall. And we'll talk about some other initiatives coming up, and then we'll try to leave about 15 minutes or so at the end for questions. So please keep your questions in mind. You can put them in the chat. You can send them to me personally, anonymously. My name is Kirsten Malik, or you can just have them be public. But I will make sure we get to all of your questions. And if there is a point within Adam's presentation where you'd like to interrupt with a question, please do so. We love that kind of interaction, and we always welcome it. So with that, I will hand that over to Adam.
All right, thanks, Kirsten. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking this time to learn a little bit more about updates, and I'm excited that you're all here. We were trying to be really cool and like, let's do a fun game and get everyone opened up, and then I was like, this is people's lunchtime, so why don't we just pop through the information? And I know that the one thing I typically try to do is safeguard lunch, so I'm very mindful that I appreciate you guys being here during your lunchtime. All right, I'm going to share some slides with you and kind of talk through. And as Kirsten said, honestly, if you just want to be like, hey, quick question before you move on, or can you go back to the previous slide, happy to do that. So let me cue us up here. Pray that technology works. Okay, so just a quick sort of rundown of Build. And I always share with folks that really it's about our work to help transform young people's lives, right? And to make their life, get them with the supports that they need to be strong and to go out into the world, whether it's college or work, whatever it may be, and be amazing people. When we think about the way our work is structured, so on the right, we have in purple is kind of what we call our core services. So it's our intervention work, prevention, and education. And then around that, we wrap it with clinical and community wellness supports, and then enrichment activities and programs as well. And I'll get into those a little bit more in the next slides. How youth are referred to Build, it's a lot of ways. I think I'm always say that youth vote with their feet, right? And so they'll show up, it's word of mouth. If they like what you do, if they like the people there and they feel that there's the people who are genuine and honest, people are going to show up. But we get young people a lot of ways, from the police, the courts, social workers, schools. And the idea is that anyone, whether it's a parent who's coming in because they want their young person really engaged in some cool things, or because they're worried that they're off track and not sure what to do. This is how young people come to Build. Our first core program, as I mentioned, was our intervention work. And Build is a 51-year-old organization, started in 1969. We were the first street gang intervention program in the city of Chicago. And so intervention is really woven into the DNA of who we are as an organization and the work we do. What is intervention? That is really intervening in young people's lives who are either gang involved, justice involved, maybe on the fringe and stepping into the path that could be detrimental. So our team of men and women actually work with them where they're at, right? So building trust is the critical sort of piece to all of what makes our young people and the work that intervention does successful. And I'll tell you, it could happen pretty quickly that a young person really wants to gravitate to someone to really be a mentor to them. And then oftentimes it could take 6 months up to a year before that level of trust is even built. And so one of our core values here at Build is persistence. And so we know that we're going to persist through it, whether young people are 100% ready to dive in and do this work, or whether they're on the fence, or whether they start with us, then leave, and then come back. We're always going to be here for them. Our intervention work continues virtually, in the sense that they're on phone calls, some FaceTime calls, Google Hangouts, Zoom, but a lot of their work still is actually in person. So masked up at a school, at a partner site, and doing the work individually with young people. Our next core program is prevention. And so these are all of our after school programs that we do for young people. And we are located in school sites across the city. So as far south as Fuller Park, Bronzeville, Humboldt Park, East Garfield Park here in Austin. And those are programs designed for young people as young as 6, actually all the way through high school. And so when we think about what we're trying to do in prevention programming, it really is academic support, exposure to new and exciting activities and fun things. What's happened now during the fall with prevention is that we have some sites that are virtual, and we're also in person providing e-learning support at some of our partner sites as well. So in Humboldt Park, we're at Erie Charter School, which is a school that we've been in for about 5 years now. And we are providing the e-learning support with about 25 students every day. In Austin, we're at DePriest Elementary, and we are providing e-learning support to about another 25 young people as well. And you may imagine that e-learning support, it is important, right? Because a lot of our households either don't have access to a computer, don't have access to Wi-Fi, or there are too many people on Wi-Fi. As I think many of us have learned, right? When you have a household and everyone has to be online, it really starts to take a toll on that Wi-Fi and the strength of it. So we've opened up sites here. And that's what our prevention programming is doing now. We will actually do more on-site here at Build in the coming weeks. 3 days a week, we're going to be providing e-learning support to young people as well.
Adam, there's a question in the chat, just going
Yes.
back to intervention, that we have statewide recidivism rates, but do we know anything about Chicago only recidivism rates?
That's a very good question. I will have to go back and see. I imagine that there are certainly Chicago recidivism rates. I will say that the reason why juvenile probation and the courts like to work with us is because typically our rates of recidivism are so low, and that once young people are plugged in, that they typically do not wind back up in the system. But that's a good question, and certainly we will get that information. Are there any other questions? I saw that my screen's flashing, but didn't know. Our education work is our third core program, and also known as Building Futures. And that is centered around helping young people navigate the process to getting to college, right? So from SAT, ACT preparation, the college application process, FAFSA forms, and getting through that process. And it's with the young person, right, with the student, but it's also with the family. These are some really interesting times, certainly currently, but the process of understanding if your son or daughter is the first to go to college, what does that really mean, right? And if you're sending your baby off to another state, right, that moving out of your home, what does that look like? So we work with the families as well to navigate through some of these transitions, what it means. Our team is really there to help ensure that our young people can stay in school. And sometimes there are things that happen at home that might call a young person back. And so we have some dollars and a team member whose job really is to make sure that maybe we can support the family during a crisis. The lights were turned off because mom may have lost her job. So rather than the student leaving college to come home to help mom, we really try to fill in the gap, get her lights turned back on, find ways to connect her for employment so that that young person can actually stay in school. But it's tough, right? It's the separation, leaving your community, your neighborhood, as it is for all students, but in particular, our young people here, I think some of the guilt of leaving home knowing that stuff is happening and wanting to come back and help support that. So we work with the whole family as we're working with young people that get to school. Our next program, which is now sort of the wraparound, sorry, let me go back. So what are we doing virtually now in the fall? So we're hosting virtual college visits. We are actually supporting young people virtually with e-learning, navigating that process. So for right now, all of our education outreach specialists, as they're called, are working virtually. Was there a question, Kirsten, in the box? No? Okay. So enrichment. Enrichment is kind of all of the fun programs and things that young people would want to do and be exposed to. And so we know that all the enrichment activities that we provide is really about exposure. How do we get young people to work in our iris farm, which you see in the top left corner, right? Planting and growing. And you move over to the right, you see two young women there in the podcast studio. What does it mean to do a podcast show? And I'll tell you, if you haven't heard any of our podcast show, this is my plug, you can go to our website, buildchicago.org, and on that opening page, there you'll be able to find Build Radio, which if you click, it will take you right to all of our podcast shows. I do have a favorite, which is always episode 7, but I love them all because they're absolutely amazing. But I think episode 7 is truly, it's special to me, I guess, and I'll let you figure out why you think it's special to me. Very good. Young people are creating stories. They're actually creating music. They're singing. So it's a collage in a 40 to 50-minute episode. It's a whole bunch of these cool things that young people have done. Podcasting. We've got, of course, the arts, which we do across all of our sites. Music, sports. Sports has always been a draw for Build and how to engage young people, and something that's happened for over 50 years now. These are exciting programs. I can tell you right now, we are hosting all of our enrichment programs in person at Build, small groups. And on different days, there's music, there's art, there's some open studio time. And then also what we're doing with Ignite Studios in partnership, we're actually doing glass making. And the hope is once we get through our season of glass making, once the pandemic, someone hits that switch and it goes away, we will actually take them to the Ignite Studios and do glass blowing. So it's kind of the intro to glass blowing. So super excited about that. Enrichment also has a lot of fun stuff that they do over the summer. From there's play streets, there's basketball, we call hoops on the block. We're getting ready this fall to do a spooky campus, so COVID safe way for young people in the neighborhood to use our entire campus. And let me pause for a second. Our campus is actually one full city block. The building that we operate in is used to be Short Bank back in the day. So it's a 10,000 square foot L-shaped building. But we then have the rest of this amazing campus to spread out. So we have a lot of community partners who've joined forces with us, including 15th District Police Station. And we are going to put on a spooky all ages campus, a spooky campus for all ages to do safe trick-or-treating. So I don't know who's more excited about that, the kids or me, but I love Halloween. So last but not least, our clinical and community wellness. As you can imagine, the trauma that our young people have faced in living and growing up in communities that are plagued by poverty and violence means we have a lot of young people who are carrying not only the baggage, but just a lot of the stress of just living simply every day in these neighborhoods. So our clinical and community wellness teams has grown rapidly. Currently, as has been since the pandemic, is that our young people are actually meeting virtually with their therapists. So a lot of Zoom meetings are happening with them. We have a few who are coming on site. So we do have a few young people who want to see their therapist in person. And so we have a smaller number of those who are meeting with their therapist. This has taken off in a way that I'm not sure we could have exactly imagined, but you know, when I started 5 years ago, we had one therapists on site, and now we have a team of almost 25. What's new to this group of work also is our crisis response team. And that work is new to build, about a little over a year old. And a crisis response team actually gets the notification through the police station that someone has been shot and typically have probably died or will be en route and not make it at the hospital. So our crisis response teams will go out there, be on the scene, work with the family, meet up at the hospital. Sadly, we may have to go to the morgue with them to identify their loved one, and then walk them through the process of burial, navigating whether or not they're going to be able to stay inside their home or they need to relocate, thinking about, they needed to take time off. They may have lost their job as a result of this. So thinking about all the ways that we would support a family who's struggling through one of the most incredibly difficult times in their lives of tragedy. And so that work is, sadly, as you've seen, right, when the weekend reports come out and, how deadly a weekend it's been, our team has really been working around the clock on those weekends. It's unfortunate that, a Memorial Day, a Labor Day, that we would typically think, great, we get together with family and enjoy. For us at Build, and especially for that team, it really means, oh my gosh, we have to be ready because it's going to be a violent weekend. And I know that we are all working to the day that will not be the case, that we actually can and families can enjoy their times together without all of this violence. So that's our clinical and community wellness. Our crisis response team is still meeting in person, so they're not virtual. And as I mentioned, our clinical teams are mostly virtual with the exception of a few who are meeting.
Adam, we have a couple questions here.
Sure.
One person asking about the split between boys and girls who receive mental health services. Is there a difference in that ratio?
Here's the interesting part I will tell you is that the biggest users of mental health services early on were the young men. And our intervention team was very grateful to have the clinical team on board because they had a lot of young men that they were working with who were struggling with all sorts of trauma-related issues. So men are very much make up a big significant portion of the work that our clinical team does. And quickly, if I may tell one quick story of this young man, this is early on when we started. He had been kicked out of several schools for being very violent in class, not just to students, but to teachers as well. And he was a big guy. I mean, intimidating, just huge. And we started providing services to him because he was angry. He had been kicked out of several schools, and started working with a therapist and really was able to understand some of the issues he was challenged with. And I remember the one day I saw him come in and he's like, Jana's our therapist. Miss Jana, can I just come and sit in the therapy room? I want to calm myself down. And that was, to me, apart from being touching, but wow, that a young man who schools had kicked out, people were afraid of, and Miss Jana had worked with him in such a way that he knew, I just need to come. I'm worked up, but rather than get in trouble to fight or do anything bad, I need to just let me come into the clinical wellness room and calm myself down. And that simple point of identifying, he knew what he needed. He didn't want to be violent, right? He didn't want to act out. He wanted to calm himself down. And in that clinical community wellness room, there are couches, there's aromatherapy, there's nice lighting in there. Honestly, everyone wants to go in there and calm down, I'll tell you. It's this great space. And he did it. And the success of him today is that we were able to get him placed in another school. He joined the drama club. He was in all these clubs, and he would report it back, Miss Jana, I love meeting with you, but I don't think I need your help in that way anymore, right? Like I love where I'm at school. I'm having a good time. I'm doing so much. So wanted to share that story to say that all of that really helps. And sometimes these young people just need to kind of find a way to break in and then tear apart some of the things that they were holding on to kind of realize their new space. But yes, men, young men, boys are as big a user of the services as our young women and girls are.
Mm-hmm. One more question asking about how do we work together with other mental health providers on the West Side?
Absolutely. Good question. So we, a few ways. So there's, of course, through referrals. So if someone does not have the capacity to serve someone, we have referrals back and forth. We are actually trying to put together the Coalition of Mental Health Providers here in Austin and bringing us all together to solve sort of for that bigger picture. How do us as this providing this neighborhood and this community, how do we work together and really have a strong web of support? So that's another way. We have a partner across the street, Bobby E. Wright, who just moved in. Literally, I could walk out. I see his office from from my office window here. But they do psychiatry, and they're going to have a pharmacy on site at their location. So it's a perfect matchup, right? So when our young people may need a psych evaluation, we can send them across the street. They can get that, and then they can get meds right there and still receive treatment from us. So when you think about the ways and opportunities for partnership across the street, it's happening. And then we're pulling people together for that conversation to map out, where the gaps are and what parts of Austin and need more services. And of note, we just opened a Humboldt Park office on North Avenue, where we'll be providing also a series of community services to the Humboldt Park neighborhood as well. So just wanted to quickly, I know probably many of you received our summer update, but this was summer camp, a nice aerial view of it. And I just want to say, I'm so grateful we were able to do it. And I thank all the donors who really believed in what we were trying to do. We launched July 6th. We had 7 weeks of programming, and happy to report that we had not one incident of COVID infection from our staff or from our young people. We had about 100 young people who were registered for camp. At any one time, we'd have as many as 60 kids, 10 inside, and then these 5 tents outside on its high end. And it was great. We had chickens in the little chicken coop you see right here. This is our chicken coop, so the kids love the chickens. The farm was just getting ready and underway in bloom. We had a late season, but we got it in the ground just in time. And so it truly was a magnificent time. And the one thing that I would share, which I feel is just reinforces why the work is so important, is, as all of us probably have experienced this one way or another, like this summer has just been tough, right? It was the pandemic, social isolation. Then it was in our community, people didn't have safe homes to stay in. Our kids were in crisis quite a bit, and we're out on the street, no PPE. And then add to that, George Floyd's murder and the unrest that happened as a result of that. And then the looting that happened, and listening to our team and our young people who the store has been looted, the streets are shut down. I don't have groceries. What can I do? The rise in violence during all of this time, right? It's just made it one horrific summer. And I remember I pulled up one morning and, hearing the laughter of young people who were outside and enjoying their time here. And it just kind of washed over me in a way that was healing, because I was feeling the grunt of all of this on top of trying to manage through an organization through this darkness. It was dark. And to remember that, every young person needs to have laughter. This needs to be a summer that they will remember that these 7 hours they were here with us have made a difference in their lives, right? Everything else around them may be burning down. It just feels horrific. But for those 7 hours they're here with us, they are made to feel like a kid. The mentors were there. They had fun. It was tricky with a mask all day, but they managed through it. And this was a safe space for them from the minute they walked onto our campus. After all their screenings and checks, they got right into what they were doing and just felt at peace. And that to me this is what it should be, right? No child should ever have to live through the horror of all the things we've witnessed on TV. So super excited about summer camp, and thank you all who supported it. Just some pictures of camp and the farm and bloom. Our parking lot was converted in the afternoon for hoops in the parking lot with our older kids. just some more fun, and of course our chickens pecking around, and yoga outdoors. So we made use of all the campus to make sure our kids were having a good time. Our teams that were out doing community walks, talking to neighbors, making sure that they knew we were here, and really just checking in with them. Kind of, I always called it kind of back to being old school, you know, where you actually just talk to people. How's your day? What's going on? And we knew things were tough, but just wanted them to know that if they needed anything, we were here. And more importantly, we were all kind of in this together, struggling through, but we're here to support. So I want to kind of talk about the exciting pieces also that are happening. So in our 10,000 square foot building here, we're out of space, and that's a good thing. It means we've got programs, we've got kids. Under normal sort of non-COVID times, we'd have anywhere from 80 to 100 kids on site. This place is just full of energy and excitement. And if you've ever been here when program and everyone was in the building, you'd feel it. So we embarked on a capital campaign to really build this state-of-the-art teen and community center. It'll be almost 50,000 square feet of new space. The plan is to build inside the parking lot. We actually preserve a lot of green space, which is good news because we have so much of it. And we're going to connect it to the current building. We'll have all sorts of cool things: gym, track, fitness center. We're going to have a lot of mental health rooms now, which is super cool. And it's all kind of integrated into where the youth spaces are. There's a game room, there's a tech lab. We've got so many great spaces for young people. Our art studio will probably quadruple in size. We have a maker's lab, music production, music recording studios, and a wood shop. We've got great partners who are partnering with us to really deliver some really cool programming once we get started. That's kind of the bigger plan, and so excited to show you some of the more updated renderings that we have. And this will all be new space. So this street right here is Harrison. This is Laramie. This little tiny spot here you see is actually the current building we're in. It'll be 3 stories. So this will be the first 2 stories, the third story is up here. And another view of the entryway when you come in. And we really want it to just feel as open to the neighborhood, you know, with our cool sort of what we call the living fence, where you have green and foliage that grows in it, with this cool, welcoming, opening space right off of Harrison that welcomes you right into the campus and into the building. So this is another view this is Congress, and this is Laramie, and kind of an overhead view that will show sort of the farm and the garden and what the building will look like from the back. Super excited. Our plan is to break ground in summer of 21, so next summer, and to have a grand opening in summer of 22. This is our plan, and we haven't, this is not a public announcement, I will say, because I always get yelled at. We're in a silent phase. Don't tell everybody, but you sort of have to tell everybody, right? As you're raising money. But I wanted to share with you because I think this is kind of the hope, right? When you think about, we read about all the disinvestment on the west and south sides. We hear about all of the things that are traumatic in these neighborhoods, and why aren't there more newer opportunities and buildings and things for community? Well, Build has not only put its stake in the ground here in the corner of Harrison and Laramie, but we're going to put our 50 plus years of experience into this opportunity now to make sure that our young people, our community, our seniors, people from the neighborhood see this as a hub and a hive of activity. This will move us to a 7-day-a-week operation. This will move us to 2 shifts of staff. We plan on keeping our gym open till midnight. We want to have spaces for older adults to come in, for older youth to be here and be safe and not on the street. And just imagine all the possibilities and things that will happen inside these walls and on this entire campus. So we're fired up about it, to say the least. And if you talk to me and you want to talk more about it, happy to do so. But this is what we're super excited about, of course, all the work that we're doing.
Adam, there's a question about related to camp, and maybe also this. Did you have any safety concerns or security problems this summer with the increased violence?
I'll tell you that the one city block we were on, nothing happened. And meaning there were no safety concerns. Now, early on, I will say, not too far from on Laramie, further north of us, there was a shooting that happened right, I think, as we had kicked off camp in that first week. Thankfully, there were no bullets that flew anywhere in our location. Unfortunately, someone did lose their life, and it was during the day. But we had signs that were plastered, big 30 by 5 foot signs, 30 foot long by 35 feet high, that said youth camp for kids, summer camp for kids, right? And the idea was we wanted everyone to know this was sacred ground. Do not mess with it. Do not bring any of the mess inside of the campus. We also had our intervention teams talk to the gangbangers who are not too far from us and said, look, this is for young people. Let our kids come and be safe here. Don't do any of the activity that you would normally do during the time. And I will say we were successful the whole summer with no incidents of violence that happened with our young people. What was the other question, Kirsten?
There's one other question here about how is Bill's relationship with the police?
Good question. I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay. So we have been partners with the police well before I got here, and certainly I've been here 5 years now, Bill. We have a fantastic partnership with the police, and I will tell you why we do. In the 15th district, Commander Cato, who was the then Commander Cato, he's now been moved up, he's deputy chief. He did things very differently. He engaged partners, he engaged community. He was looking for ways to really have better partnerships and work as a team, and to really think through what could police be doing differently. He has an after-school program actually that they opened up on site at the police station that is jam-packed all the time, right? And that's because the officers understand this is about our kids, right? And we know that not all police are bad. Now, my oldest son would say, I don't agree with you. But I will tell you, in the 15th district, we have great leadership that has really tried to shape and change the narrative, that has really tried to do things differently. And they also, Commander Cato started the first Austin response team, which was a partnership with a few nonprofits, faith-based, and the police, and they would share intelligence of what was happening in the neighborhood, shootings, conflicts. And so what we came up with as a group was community responses. And what those responses do, we would bring all of our teams together. We'd have an identified hot block where there was a lot of gang activity or violence, and where we were worried that there was going to be retaliation. And we would go door to door. We talked to parents. We talked to the people who live there and said, this is who we are. We know that there's been some issues here in the block. Here's information on services. You know, what else might you need? And we had 100% success rate that after every response that was done, there was no retaliatory attacks back on that block. So that speaks to, I think, community working together. They didn't come in to police that block. It was all of us as providers, as police, talking to people, wanting to understand what was happening, where their services needed, did they need to plug anyone in to a specific service. So that partnership has bled through all of the 15th district, so much so that the 15th district is actually the model for the rest of Chicago police districts to model after what they've done. And so for that, we're in partner and have been with the police to do the work. I also understand out there, not everyone has experienced police in this way. So we're mindful of that and know that people have had very different experiences. That our goal has been to have police and youth interact, not as a police officer in their role, but as people, right? So when we bring them out, hey, come shoot hoops with our kids. Hey, stop by the teen center, see what's going on. Hey, have a forum for community, what they call a coffee with a cop, right? They're there, they're talking through, people can come in from the neighborhood and ask questions, concerns they might have. So we know that we have power as a nonprofit to call on our public sort of servants, if you will, as the police, to say, we need this to look different. This is what we're doing. This is how it can be better if we're working together in partnership. So that's been our relationship with the police department. And I will say, not every police department is the same, obviously, right? So really the commander of the police department is really what makes then everyone in that district respond. So 15th has been the best so far.
Thanks. We have a few more questions. Please feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get as many as we can. We have someone who wants to know if there's going to be an art show this year, Adam.
Oh, yes, there will be an art show. The art show is so much fun. And our theme this year is purposed for this moment. And it is a theme that entails understanding how each and every one of us would have been purposed for the moment. The moment can be interpreted in a lot of ways. And what is our purpose during the moment? We're scheduled still at the end of February, the last Saturday in February. Is that correct, Kirsten? I know we're in planning for that. So what will probably happen, again, as we know, COVID rates are rising. We may be rolling back. We know the virtual component of the art show will be strong. If we're able to do a very smaller in-person venue, we will do that as well, but there will be a strong virtual presence. So people will get to see the art and bid on it. And all the proceeds from that art show actually support all the arts programming that we do.
And someone is asking after the build staff, how the build staff is holding up.
Marco, your build staff. No pressure, kidding. He is build staff. You know, I think we're doing pretty well considering. I will say during our time of shelter in place, we realized we needed to stay in communication with everyone weekly, right? Because it was at that moment where you had the mayor, the governor, president, everyone's coming on and sharing some updates. So we kept communication weekly with them. But I will say that our staff have suffered tragedies. They've lost loved ones to COVID. They've lost loved ones to gun violence. So things you've heard on the news directly impacted to our staff. So, you know, I think as a whole, we've done some work to really manage some of the mental health stress and trauma that's happened with our teams. I would say as a whole, we're okay. And then I think it has taken a toll on others as well. So we're mindful of that. People are being asked to take the time they need to heal and recover through this. And at the end of the day, you know, what I think my challenge is to be mindful and sensitive of all that, yet the work must happen still, because none of our funders have said, hey, Adam, you know what? We're going to give you money, but you guys sit in place. You don't have to do anything. You guys heal yourselves. And then when you're ready, you come back. I wish that were the case, honestly, right? It's just not realistic, I don't believe. But so I think my challenge has always been needing to continue to push us forward without seeming insensitive to what's happened, because I'm a social worker by my training, so I know better, but also I'm a leader now who has to push through a very dark time, give hope, instill that we will get to the other side, right? And think about this bigger picture that we're trying to have everyone hold on to and not lose hope for, which is this new space and all the great work we'll continue to do. So it's been challenging, certainly, but I'm grateful to my team that has really done their best to shoulder up side by side with each of us to get through the tough times. Thank you, staff.
Are there any more questions? Please feel free to unmute if you do. But if not, thank you everyone for coming. We're close to our time. We promised to give you at least 15 minutes to have lunch before 1 o'clock. So there it is.
I can go eat. No, just kidding.
Thank you for being part of this and for this recording and for your wonderful questions. We will send out a copy of the slides. As Elaine requested, happy to do that.
Absolutely.
And you can always reach out them. You can always reach us. You can always follow us on social media. We try to keep that updated to see the daily operations of Build. But thank you so much for your support and for your participation today.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.